Hi guys, how are you? It is Mr. Sullivan again. It is going to be, what is today, Wednesday? It's going to be Thursday when you get this. We're going to finish Blood on the River today. So I'm super, super excited. So when you go to your Google Classroom, obviously you're probably already there because that's how the video is that you see. But you're going to see two PDFs. You're going to see one that says, just like you see on my screen, you're going to see one that says Blood on the River chapters 26, 27. And then you're also going to see the afterword. We're going to read the two chapters and then I'll read the afterword to you because it has a lot of really good factual information about the real event of Jamestown that we're about to read. So we're going to go ahead and dive on in. Remember, we ended with you guys kind of predicting what you think will happen because Sam has ultimately made a decision that he feels was out of love. And so he feels like he's about to steal a baby. He wants to take baby Virginia to the Fort Comfort, I think. Is that what it is? I can't remember off the top of my head. But and the baby's mom wants to stay in Jamestown, even though Sam knows it's not a very good idea. So I want you guys to be paying attention as we read this because on Monday, I believe we're going to try Monday at 1. We're going to try and get both classes together in a virtual meeting like Mrs. Motes did already so we can talk about and discuss the ending of the book. That's kind of my goal. All right. So I don't necessarily have any questions that I'm going to give you today. I just want you to read the book. There will be an activity that'll be coming probably posted on Friday. That's kind of like the culminating activity of the book. But you don't have to have the book to have it, to do it, obviously, because you don't have the books, or at least you only have half of the book in your hands. So, all right, so we're going to go ahead and jump on in. This is Blood on the River chapters 26 and 27. Let me move this over so I can make it bigger. Well, that was helpful. There we go, that works. As you can tell, this was my teacher book that I copied for you guys because you see a bunch of little notes and things on it. Yeah, that would be me. I did that. So don't worry too much about that. I'm going to put myself over here. And hopefully I don't have to move, but we'll see. I don't know. So we're on chapter 26. Good men did never their country's ruin bring. But when evil men shall injuries begin, not caring to corrupt and violate the judgment seats for their own lucrative sakes, then look that country cannot long have peace, though for the present it has rest and ease. Bunch of big words. It was told to us by William Simons. Not real sure what he means by it because we haven't read the chapters yet. So maybe we'll come back to that and talk about that a little bit. The next morning, I'm ready. My canoe, nestled in the rushes, has a bed of blankets, a jar of sweetened water, a clean rag, and a spoon for the baby, and a piece of bread saved from last night's supper for me. I go to Anne and John's cabin. Anne is busy wrapping up dried beef and bread for John, and John is trying to comfort a fussy Virginia. Let me take her for a walk in the fresh air, I say. Then you two can have some time together before the barge leaves. John gladly hands Virginia to me, and Anne ties Virginia's tiny bonnet on her and tells me to make sure I support her head, and I promise that I will. The fort is swarming with people. I walk by the crowds, out the gates, and just keep on going. I know there will be people outside the fort as well, so that my message will get back to Anne. At the canoe, I'm in luck. 2 little girls are washing clothes in the river. Oh, can we see Mrs. Layden's baby? One asks. I tilt Virginia down so they can admire her, being careful to support her head. I'm going to Point Comfort, I tell the girls as I climb into the canoe. Mrs. Layden will meet me there. I imagine the ruckus when Anne discovers Virginia missing and that these 2 girls will be in the middle of it, crying out in their high voices that they saw me and I said I was going to Point Comfort. I will have a head start by then, but I'm sure that Anne will be on her way following me. That is what I'm counting on, that she will be on that barge with her husband. It will take hours to get to Point Comfort, but in my canoe, I will be quicker than the barge, even with breaks to feed the baby child. Virginia settles nicely on her bed of blankets and falls asleep as the canoe rocks in the water. I paddle out into the middle of the river, where a bit of the current will speed me on my way. The trees on the shores have just begun to turn their autumn colors. The day is clear and warm with a gentle wind. I have no fear of a storm blowing up to capsize us. 3 times I stop paddling when Virginia fusses to be fed. I spoon the sweetened water into her mouth, and then I dip the clean rag into the sweet water, give it to her to suck on, and she goes back to sleep. It's something I saw my mom do when she took care of a baby whose mother had died until she could find a wet nurse. It is late afternoon when we make it to the fort. I pull the canoe up on shore, and Nathaniel is on watch along with another soldier who is sound asleep. As I carry Virginia towards him, Nathaniel stares at me open-mouthed. Don't ask, I tell him. I'll explain later, but please, can I put her in your tent? Nathaniel shakes his head. I have to report you to Captain Davies, my commanding officer, he says. I groan. My meat ration for a month, I offer him. His face lights up and he leads me to his tent. I feed Virginia one more time and lay her down on a straw bed to sleep. She is wet through her blanket. I forgot all about diapers. Then I go out to the waterfront to wait for the barge to arrive. I knew she would be angry, furious even. I'm not prepared for Anne's rage when she arrives at Point Comfort. I'll kill you, Anne shrieks. She runs at me, her hands raised. I try to grab her wrist, but she's too wild. Her fingernails rake my face, and I feel stinging pain, and I see my blood drip. Let me explain, I shout, but she's screaming too loudly to hear me. Thief! Murderer! Hang him! She yells. John disembarks as well. Are you mad? He shouts. He cuffs me hard. You deserve to be hanged. I start to panic. I have stolen a child. Will they hang me? But she is safe, I say. I did it to keep her safe. Captain Davies takes me roughly by the arm. Don't worry, Mrs. Layden, he says. He will be punished. Anne is sobbing now. Where is she? She demands. I see Nathaniel looking terrified. He does not want to be a part of this. I put her in Nathaniel's tent, I say quickly. That is all they need to know. I am dragged off by Captain Davies as Anne runs to find her baby. It is a makeshift brig, but it does the job. Shackles on my wrists and ankles do not allow me to move much. There's no window, just cracks between the rough boards that let me know when the sun has set. I am left with little water and the cold dirt floor to sleep on. For theft of the child Virginia, what will my sentence be? Hanging? Whipping? I have seen whippings where at the end they're flogging a corpse. Captain Smith said he wanted me alive and well when he returned to Jamestown. I may not be able to follow through on my promise. The worst of it is that I have failed. This has all been for nothing. Anne and Virginia will return to Jamestown tomorrow with the barge. Since this may be my last night on earth, I try to make my peace with God. I am sorry, I tell him. Sorry that I failed with James and that now I failed with Anne and Virginia. I hope that at least he understands that I meant no harm in stealing Virginia. I ask to please be taken to heaven with my mom. In the dark, I huddle on the floor and wish for the peace of sleep. Captain Davies! The shout wakes me. It comes from the river. Morning light slants into my cell. I hear clumsy paddle strokes and realize someone must be approaching in a canoe. Get Captain Davies now! The shout is closer. I hear footsteps, voices, someone out of breath. It was a trap, the man cries. The voices come nearer to my jail cell. I press my ear against the wall, hoping to hear Captain Ratcliffe and his men. Only a few escaped. I listen as he described the horror. The men were lured to Warokamoka with promises of corn. Instead, they were attacked. Their throats were slit. Captain Ratcliffe's end was even worse. He was tortured to death. I crouch against the wall, straining to hear, but the voices fade as the men walk away. I shake my head in despair. More men dead, and no corn brought back to Jamestown. A sound startles me. The scraping of the lock on the brig door. I get to my feet. It's time to face my sentence. End my punishment. 27. Powhatan thus invited Captain Ratcliffe and 30 others to trade for corn, and having brought them within his ambush, murdered them. So before we read the last chapter of Blood on the River, it looks like Samuel made the best decision, because if he had not stolen Virginia, Anne would not have come to Point Comfort, and she would have probably been one of the casualties when the natives from Orokomoko came and took care of Jamestown, I guess. There was a trap. So, Captain Ratcliffe was killed and all of his people were attacked. So it's probably only a matter of time before the Indian tribe gets to Jamestown. Point Comfort, February 1610. So time has went by. So this is a pretty big gap of time here. And we're at the other fort. So keep that in mind. Snow falls, fine as sugar, but inside our cabin it is toasty and warm. I'm about to get scolded as usual. Samuel, what are you doing? Anne stands with her hands on her hips. I'm hiding, I say simply. Watch. She likes it when I pop my head out. I drop the handkerchief and Virginia erupts with giggles. Anne shakes her head, but she is smiling. I hide again, and Virginia crawls to me, grabs the handkerchief, and pulls it away. She is so pleased with herself, she laughs and claps her hands. Samuel, stop your playing and come help me, Anne says. She needs more firewood. I do not hesitate, but jump up to do as she bids. I owe her my life. After she heard what happened to Captain Ratcliffe, Anne begged Captain Davies to retract my sentence. I don't know if I'd have survived the 20 lashes that were to be my punishment. Anne testified that I had done the right thing to convince her to be with her husband at Point Comfort. John, too, spoke up for me. He said I had meant well taking Virginia with me, and that he could not afford to lose his best apprentice. I owe my life to both of them. I step outside, leaving the warmth of our cabin. The air is crisp and sharp and smells of wood smoke. Snow swirls, coating the tree branches and giving everything a hushed feel. I'm wearing my moccasins, and so I walk lightly through the snow, quiet as Kanta taught me to be. I smile when I think of Kanta. When the river thaws, I will paddle across to visit him in Warosack village and trade for corn. In the meantime, the Cocottons are very close by, and my blue beads have kept us well supplied with corn from them. I go to the lean-to that protects our firewood from rain and snow and stack the heavy pieces of wood in my arms. I feel strong. I am strong. I look around at the cabins that house our Fort Algernon soldiers. I helped to build every one of them. Snow blows into my face and stings my cheeks, but I'm warm. An image flashes in my mind of another winter day. What seems like a lifetime ago of me and Richard blowing on embers in a cold cabin trying to coax up a fire. I feel a pang of missing him and of missing Captain Smith too and Reverend Hunt. Then my mind goes back further still to a small fire and a friendly hearth and my mom bent over a pot stirring. I'm doing all right, Mom. I send the words up to heaven to her. I'm living with a family, with people I love, and we have food and fire. The wind is blowing from the northwest, from Jamestown. I wonder if I can smell the smoke of their wood fires more than 30 miles away, or if it's only our fort's fires I'm smelling. The river has been frozen for many weeks now, and we have not heard from them. Are they as warm and well-fed as we are, I wonder? A sudden chill makes me shiver. I feel it like a splash of cold water, that old sense of doom and dread, the fear that made me desperate enough to snatch baby Virginia away. I shake it off quickly. No sense worrying about Jamestown now. I have my duties here, and we're safe here. Safe. The word settles on me like peace. Anne, John, and Virginia are here with me, and we are safe. I load my arms with a few more pieces of wood and then turn and walk back through the snow to our cabin. So it has a very happy ending, but you're probably left wondering, like I was, during this time that Samuel was at Point Comfort with his newfound family and his new Native American friends who were their neighbors, who were their allies, what happened to Jamestown? What happened in that time period, during that winter? The river froze and nobody could get word to them. Nobody could communicate with Jamestown because the river was frozen. So the afterward chapter is what tells us what happens to the Jamestown settlement during that time period. Okay, so I want you to kind of understand that when we read it. And I'm going to go back here. I went to the wrong one. Hold on a second. I'm going to go back to Blood on the River, the afterword. And this is what's going to tell us what happened to the Jamestown settlement. Now, I'm telling you now, guys, it's not a pretty picture. Okay, it's not a pretty picture at all. But we'll read it. Now all of us at Jamestown beginning to feel that sharp prick of hunger, which no man truly describes, but we which hath tasted the bitterness thereof. All was fish that came to net to satisfy cruel hunger, as to eat boots and shoes or any other leather some could come by. So at one point they even resorted to eating boots and shoes and any other leather that they could get for food because they were so hungry. And now famine beginning to look ghastly and pale in every face, that nothing was spared to maintain life, and to do those things which seemed incredible, as to dig up dead corpses out of graves and to eat them. If you don't understand what they're saying, it's pretty gross. They were so hungry and so starving in Jamestown during that winter that they dug up dead bodies and ate them. During the winter of 1609-1610, the settlers at Point Comfort did not go hungry. They had enough extra fish and crabs that even their hogs were well fed. Remember, this is where Sam and his new family are. As winter set in, ice formed on the river, and travel between Jamestown and Point Comfort became impossible. It was not until spring that those at Point Comfort found out about the horror that befell Jamestown that winter. Chief Powhatan ordered his tribes to stop trading with the settlers at Jamestown. The natives also went to Hog Island, which the settlers had stocked with hundreds of hogs, and slaughtered them all. Then they went back to killing any settler they found outside the fort. Settlers were afraid to hunt and fish, so they remained inside the palisades. When the stores ran out and they'd eaten the last of their sheep and goats, they ate even the laying hens. As things got worse, they ate their horses and their dogs and cats, and then any rat, mouse, or snake that they could catch. When there was nothing left to kill, they even ate their starched collars, their leather shoes, anything that would be chewed and swallowed. Men, women, and children starved and died. Hunger caused desperation. Some of the colonists began to dig up the dead bodies and eat them. One group of men escaped that terrible winter by using violence to secure a large quantity of food from one of the native tribes, and then stealing one of the ships and sailing back to England. The remaining settlers were ravaged by disease, starvation, and warfare with the Indians. Out of the roughly 500 settlers Captain Smith said were in Jamestown when he left, by spring only 60 settlers remained, all of them close to death. The winter of 1609-1610 became known as the starving time. Chief Powhatan had tried again to wipe out the tribe that came from the Chesapeake, and he had nearly succeeded. In the spring of 1610, remember, before I keep reading, remember the prophecy at the very beginning of the book? Do you remember? I know you don't have the prophecy right here in hand, and neither do I. But do you remember the prophecy where it told us that there was going to be that tribe from the Chesapeake Bay? And the Powhatans were going to battle them 3 times. The third time, I think the Powhatans were going to fall. Yeah, I remember that too. Hold on one second, guys. Sorry, guys. The baby was crying. I had to go up there. Okay, I'm not even sure what I was saying. I apologize. So, yeah, I just kind of wanted to refer back to that prophecy. So, in the spring of 1610, the man who was to be Jamestown's new governor in 1609, Sir Thomas Gates, finally arrived. He'd been shipwrecked on Bermuda for 9 months until new ships could be built from the remains of the Sea Venture. When Gates saw the desperate conditions in Jamestown, he decided to abandon the settlement and take the remaining survivors back to England. But as they sailed down the river heading home, they were met by the messenger carrying a letter. It said that Sir Thomas West, Lord de la Warr, the new Lord Governor and Captain General of Jamestown, was on his way up the river to Jamestown with 3 ships, over 150 new colonists, and food for a year. The message was clear: go back to Jamestown. Reluctantly, the settlers returned to try again. The next several years were difficult ones. Jamestown's new leaders took revenge on the natives, even the Cottons and the Warroasaks, who had helped the settlers so much. They slaughtered native men, women, and even children from many tribes. Revenge bred revenge, and there were raids and killings on both sides. In 1613, Pocahontas was kidnapped by the settlers and held hostage. In return for her freedom, she demanded that her father free the English prisoners he was holding. give back stolen English weapons and tools, and send a large quantity of corn. Chief Powhatan gave the settlers some of what they asked for, saying he would send the rest when his daughter was returned to him. The English said this was not enough. Chief Powhatan refused to give in to the hostage-takers' demands, and Pocahontas remained a prisoner. John Rolfe, a new colonist, began growing tobacco in Jamestown. Tobacco grew well in Virginia and sold well in England, and finally there was hope the colony would make a profit for the Virginia Company of London. While she was held prisoner, Pocahontas met John Rolfe. The two were married in 1614 with Chief Powhatan's blessing. Weird. This became a period of time some historians call the Peace of Pocahontas. For a while, there was not much bloodshed between the English and the natives, and the two groups shared the land together. Pocahontas, her husband John Rolfe, and their son Thomas were taken to England by Sir Thomas Dale to promote the Jamestown colony and helped Dale get financial assistance. There she became ill and died in 1617. She was buried at St. George's Parish Church in Gravesend, England. So she was buried in England. Kind of strange. You would think that she'd want to be buried in the New World, which was her home. In 1619, the first Africans arrived in the Virginia colony on a privateering ship. It is not clear whether they were slaves or indentured servants, which means they would have to work for a number of years and then they would be free. But soon, especially with so much labor needed for the tobacco fields, Africans were brought to Virginia and sold as slaves for life. Was Reverend Hunt's prediction right? Did Samuel become something much greater than a servant? Yes. In 1619, the Virginia Company of London created the House of Burgesses in Virginia. By that time, there were 11 settlements, and each settlement had its own leadership. Samuel Collier, by then a grown man, was recognized for his knowledge, skills, and ability to communicate with the natives in their own language. Captain Smith wrote that Samuel was appointed leader of a town. Captain John Smith was never able to return to Jamestown, but his writings are one of their most valuable records of what went on in the colony. Did the Powhatan prophecy ever reach its conclusion? In 1622, though Chief Powhatan had died, his empire was still strong, led by his brother, Opechancanough. There were still many more natives than Europeans living in Virginia, but more settlers arrived on ships from England every couple of months, and they were taking over more and more of the land of the Indians used for hunting and planting. Chief Opechancanough decided to wipe out the English once and for all. He carefully planned his attack on March 22, 1622. 347 colonists were killed, about one-third of the Virginia European population. The settlers began raiding the Indian villages, killing and burning, with the goal of exterminating the native people. War between the natives and the Europeans continued for years. Chief O did mount one more large attack on the settlers in 1644, but by then the European population had grown and the Indian population had been decimated. Chief O was captured and killed, and the Powhatan Empire crumbled. Just as the prophecy had predicted, the Powhatan Empire was destroyed by a new tribe that arrived from the Chesapeake Bay. During the first 100 years after the English arrived in 1607, over 90% of Virginia's native population was killed, either in warfare and massacres or by the new diseases the Europeans brought with them. As Europeans took over more and more of their land, the natives were forced onto reservations, and then over time, most of their reservations' land was taken from them. There is, however, land in the Virginia countryside that, for thousands of years, has been home to the natives people who still live there. Crazy. I do want to show you something, so I want to pause this real fast, and then I'll come back to it because I want to bring it up real fast. Maybe not. Pause. Is that going to pause? So I had this paused and I'm talking and it was paused because I'm dumb. Go. Okay. What I was trying to tell you when I thought I was unpaused was I went to this site. I'm just going to repeat it all over again. I was talking to myself, guys. Lordy. Okay. I wanted to go to this site. I wanted to show you this site. It was the first residents of Jamestown. This is a website that is the original colony members. It is the actual Jamestown Historical Park. Obviously, it's closed because of COVID-19. But if you scroll down to it, and I just Googled it, I just put Jamestown Colonist, and it's one of the first 2 or 3 websites that pop up. You can see it up here. But I just wanted to scroll down and show you the first residents in Jamestown because I wanted you guys to see who legit were real people and real history and who were characters. And what was really interesting about this was that all of the characters in our book were real people in real life. So again, you can see that they tell you which ones who were gentlemen and who were, the boys. And if you scroll through this, you're going to see you got Edward Brooks, who was one of the ones that died shortly into the expedition. You've got James Brunfield. I don't think we ever knew his last name, but there he is, James, a boy. Obviously, there was no death day, so maybe they didn't know. Remember, a lot of our history of Jamestown was from John Smith's journals, which I'm sure you can find somewhere. Samuel Collier, there he is. It even gives you a death year, unfortunately. So there's Samuel. You keep scrolling, you're going to see Thomas Henry, I think was someone they mentioned. Reverend Hunt is right here. Master, preacher, gentleman. Again, they're all here. Everybody that was in our story. Richard Mutton. Oh, and there was Nathaniel Peacock. Okay, I know that last name was not in that book. So there you go. Didn't know that, did you? There's Master Percy. Probably don't really want to know about much about him. John Ratcliffe is right here. Jehu Robinson. That was one of the kiddos that John Smith was getting blamed for his death. Again, there's all kinds of... It's just interesting to see the William Wilkinson. I think I remember Will Wilkinson. I think I remember that. Maria Wingfield. So again, these were all the original colonists, and then later some of the other ones came into play. There was like 100 and I think they said 144. So it was just kind of interesting that a lot of the people that we read about in this book, even though we all enjoyed this book, they're real people. And I thought that was pretty cool. Okay. So now that I've told you twice that there is no questions for these 2 chapters. I just want you guys to kind of sit and think about it. What I would like you to do is if you get to the end of this video, which this tells me if you watch the rest of the video, is I would like you to add some comments to your, right here. Just go ahead and add some comments, some thoughts, and what do you think? And we'll just kind of have a little class discussion on our comment tab. What do you think of the 2 chapters? Was it something you predicted? Was it something you didn't expect? What do you think about the, what Jamestown had to do during that winter? I mean, that's crazy. Remember, Samuel was so upset about, these Native Americans may be cannibals. And then look what happened the winter that, he wasn't there. They kind of became cannibals. Kind of yucky. So we'll just have a little class discussion down here in your comment tab. But I don't have any questions assigned for you right now. So I just want you to think about it since it was the ending of our book. Very cool. All right. I will talk to you guys later. I just wanted you to listen to the story, finish the book. I don't have any social studies stuff for you right now, but have a little discussion on your comment tab. And then probably look for Friday, an assignment for the ending of the book. It'll be something hopefully fun, I hope. Miss you guys. I will see you guys later. Talk to you later. Bye.